The shuttle descended through the docking bay of Galactic Concord Station, and Ambassador Elena Vasquez watched the massive structure grow larger through her window. Feeling her heart beat faster with each passing second, she had trained for this moment for 15 years, learning languages and customs of species that humanity had only known about for 2 decades. And now she was about to represent Earth at the most important diplomatic summit in human history. The station itself was a marvel of alien engineering, a spinning wheel of metal and glass that housed representatives from over 300 spacefaring civilizations. And Elena could see ships of every shape and size moving around it like fish swimming around a coral reef. "Ambassador, we dock in 5 minutes," the pilot announced over the intercom. And Elena straightened her formal diplomatic uniform. Checking her reflection one last time in the polished metal wall, she looked confident. She thought, even if she did not feel that way inside behind her. Sitting in perfect stillness was a man who had not spoken a single word during the entire journey from Earth. And his silence was somehow more reassuring than any words could have been. His name was Marcus Cole, and he wore simple gray tactical armor with no decorations or medals. Just a single word etched into his shoulder plate that read Protector. Elena had read his file before they left Earth, though most of it was classified beyond her clearance level. And what little she could access told her that Marcus was formerly Special Forces, selected from thousands of candidates for a program that officially did not exist. The Protector program was Earth's answer to a simple problem that the government had identified shortly after first contact. And that problem was this: humanity was weak compared to the ancient empires of the galaxy. So how could they keep their people safe in a universe full of predators? The answer was to create guardians who were more than human. Soldiers enhanced and trained to be the last line of defense for Earth's most important representatives abroad. Marcus was one of 400 such guardians, and his only mission was to ensure that Elena returned home alive. The shuttle touched down with a gentle bump, and the doors hissed open to reveal a reception committee of alien officials waiting on the docking platform. Elena rose from her seat and walked toward the exit, and Marcus followed 3 steps behind her, his eyes scanning every shadow and corner of the massive bay. The reception committee was led by a tall creature with blue skin and 4 arms, a Thelian named Ambassador Zoris, who served as the official greeter for new arrivals to the station. Ambassador Vasquez, Zoris said in heavily accented English, spreading all 4 arms in a gesture of welcome. Earth is honored to finally send a representative to the Concord Summit, and we are pleased to receive you. Elena smiled and performed the traditional Thelian bow she had practiced hundreds of times, and Zoris made a sound of approval and her respect for their customs. "The honor is ours, Ambassador Zoris," Elena replied. "Humanity is grateful for the opportunity to participate in these historic discussions." As they walked through the station's gleaming corridors, Zoris explained the schedule for the summit, but Elena found her attention drawn to the other species they passed along the way. There were insectoids with clicking mandibles and reptilians with scales that shimmered like jewels. And there were beings made of living crystal and others who floated through the air like clouds of colored smoke. Humanity had spent its entire existence believing they were alone in the universe. And now Elena was walking among the stars, surrounded by wonders beyond imagination. But not all the looks they received were friendly, and Elena noticed several delegations watching them with expressions that ranged from curiosity to open hostility. One group in particular caught her attention: a collection of tall insectoid creatures with dark red carapaces and eyes like polished obsidian. And they stared at the human delegation with an intensity that made Elena's skin crawl. "Who are they?" she asked Zoris quietly. Nodding toward the watching insects, Zoris lowered his voice, and Elena could hear something like concern in his tone. "That is the delegation from the Velthari Dominion," he explained. "They are one of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. and they have ruled over hundreds of worlds for 10,000 years. They do not seem happy to see us." Elena observed, "The Voltheri have claimed the region of space where 3 of your colony worlds are located." Zora said carefully, "They consider humans to be trespassers on their territory, and they have made it clear that they expect this summit to resolve the issue in their favor." Elena felt a chill run down her spine, because she understood now why Earth's government had insisted she bring a protector with her. The Voltheri were not here to negotiate in good faith. They were here to intimidate, and possibly much worse. She glanced back at Marcus, who had not reacted visibly to any of this information. But Elena could see that his eyes had locked onto the Voltheri delegation and had not looked away. The leader of the Voltheri group was a massive creature nearly 3 meters tall, with mandibles that looked sharp enough to cut through steel and eyes that held nothing but cold contempt. His name, Elena would later learn, was High Executor Krixveth, and he was the supreme commander of the Dominion's military forces and the architect of countless conquests. Krixveth stared at the humans for a long moment, then made a gesture to his followers and turned away, disappearing down a side corridor without a word. "I would advise caution during the summit, Ambassador," Zora said quietly. "The Voltheri are not known for their patience or their mercy." Elena nodded, keeping her expression neutral even as her mind raced through the implications of what she had just witnessed. She had come to this station hoping to build bridges between humanity and the galactic community. But it seemed that some species had no interest in bridges. They wanted submission, and they were used to getting what they wanted that night in her assigned quarters. Elena sat at her desk reviewing the files on the Voltheri Dominion, and each page she read made the situation seem more dire. The Voltheri had never lost a war in their entire recorded history, and species that defied them were either destroyed or enslaved without exception. Humanity's 3 colony worlds in their claimed territory were home to nearly 2 million people, and the Dominion was demanding that all of them be relocated or handed over to Voltheri rule. Neither option was acceptable to Earth's government, which meant that tomorrow's summit would either end in a miracle of diplomacy or the beginning of a conflict that humanity could not hope to win. Elena closed the files and looked across the room at Marcus, who stood by the door like a statue, never sleeping and never resting. "Do you think we can get through this peacefully?" she asked him. Marcus was silent for a moment, then spoke for the first time since they had left Earth. "I hope so, Ambassador," he said, his voice calm and steady. "But if we cannot, then I will make sure you get home safely, no matter what stands in our way." Elena believed him, and somehow that belief let her sleep that night, even with the shadow of the Voltheri Dominion hanging over everything. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Concord was the largest enclosed space Elena had ever seen. A massive dome of transparent crystal that showed the stars spinning slowly overhead as the station rotated through the void. Hundreds of delegations sat in tiered rows that rose up from the central speaking platform, and the air was filled with the sounds of 1,000 different languages being whispered and translated through countless devices. Elena took her assigned seat in the section reserved for new member species, a small and humble position near the back of the hall. But she did not mind, because she was simply grateful to be present at all. Marcus stood behind her chair, his gray armor making him almost invisible among the shadows of the observation gallery, and his presence gave her strength as the summit began its 3rd day of discussions. The first 2 days had been tense but uneventful, filled with speeches and proposals that circled around the real issues without ever addressing them directly. The Voltheri delegation had remained quiet during this time, watching and waiting like predators studying their prey, and their silence had been more unnerving than any words could have been. But today felt different, and Elena could sense a change in the atmosphere of the hall. a tension that crackled like electricity before a storm. High Executor Krixveth rose from his seat before the morning session could officially begin, and his massive form cast a shadow across the delegations nearest to him. "I invoke the right of accusation," he announced, his voice booming through the translation systems and echoing off the crystal dome above. A wave of shocked murmurs swept through the assembly, and Elena saw Ambassador Zoris turn pale with alarm. The right of accusation was an ancient law of the Concord that allowed any member species to formally charge another with crimes against galactic peace, and it had not been invoked in over 300 years. Elena felt her stomach drop as Krixveth turned his obsidian eyes directly toward her. "I accuse the human delegation of espionage against the Velthari Dominion," the High Executor declared. "I accuse Ambassador Elena Vasquez of inciting rebellion among our vassal species and plotting the overthrow of rightful Velthari authority in the contested territories." The hall erupted into chaos, with delegates shouting questions and demands in dozens of languages, while security officers moved to form barriers between the various factions. Elena stood from her seat, her face burning with anger and disbelief at the obvious lies being spoken about her. "These accusations are completely false," she shouted over the noise. "I have done nothing but seek peaceful negotiations since my arrival." But Krixveth was not finished, and he raised one clawed hand to activate a holographic display that flickered to life above the central platform. "We have evidence," he said with cold satisfaction. Communications intercepted between the human ambassador and rebel leaders within Dominion space. Recorded meetings where she promised Earth's military support for their uprisings. Financial records showing payments from Earth to terrorist organizations operating against Velthari interests. The hologram showed messages and recordings that looked completely authentic, with Elena's face and voice clearly visible as she spoke words of treason and conspiracy. Elena watched in horror, because she knew that none of this was real. She had never sent those messages or attended those meetings or spoken those words. The Velthari had created false evidence using technology that humans could barely imagine, and they had done it so perfectly that no one in the assembly would question its authenticity. "Under the laws of the Galactic Concord," Krixveth continued, "a species accused of such crimes must surrender the accused individual for trial under the laws of the accusing party." He turned to face Elena directly, and his mandibles spread wide in what might have been a smile. "Ambassador Vasquez will be detained immediately and transported to Dominion space, where she will face justice for her crimes against our people." Elena felt the blood drain from her face as she understood what was really happening here. This was never about justice or law. This was a trap, designed to humiliate humanity and demonstrate their powerlessness before the ancient empires of the galaxy. If Earth surrendered her to the Dominion, they would be admitting weakness and inviting further aggression against their people. But if Earth refused, they would be defying the laws of the Concord and giving the Velthari an excuse to declare war. It was a perfect strategy, and Elena could see no way to escape it. The other delegations in the hall watched in silence, their eyes carefully averted from the human section, because none of them wanted to attract the attention of the Velthari by showing sympathy to the accused. These were the rulers of the galaxy. Elena realized with bitter clarity beings who had seen countless species rise and fall over millions of years to them. Humanity was nothing but an insect to be crushed or ignored, and none of them would risk their own comfort to help. Krixveth gestured toward the entrance of the hall, and a squad of 12 Dominion enforcers marched into the chamber in perfect formation. They were elite soldiers of the Velthari military, each one standing over 2 meters tall and encased in chitinous armor that had been grown from their own bodies through genetic engineering. Their weapons were integrated into their arms, biological cannons that could fire bolts of superheated plasma capable of burning through starship hulls. Elena had read about Dominion enforcers in her preparation files, and she knew that each one was worth 100 ordinary soldiers in combat. 12 of them together could slaughter an entire army. And they were walking straight toward her. "You will come with us, human," the lead enforcer commanded, his voice clicking and buzzing through his translation device. "Resist, and you will be subdued by force." Elena looked around the hall one final time, searching for any ally or any hope, but she found nothing but empty stares and turned backs. This was it. She thought the end of her mission and possibly the end of her life. She closed her eyes and prepared herself for whatever came next. And then she heard Marcus speak. "That will not be happening." Elena opened her eyes to see her protectors stepping out of the shadows, moving to stand directly between her and the approaching enforcers. He looked so small compared to those towering alien warriors. Just one human man in simple gray armor facing down 12 monsters bred for war. But there was something in the way he stood, something in the calm certainty of his voice, that made the enforcers hesitate in their advance. Krixveth laughed, a horrible clicking sound that echoed through the suddenly silent hall. "What is this?" the High Executor demanded. "One human soldier thinks he can defy the might of the Dominion?" Marcus did not answer him, and he did not take his eyes off the enforcers in front of him. "Ambassador Vasquez is under my protection," he said simply. "She will not be arrested on false charges, and she will not be taken anywhere against her will." The lead enforcer raised his weapon arm, the biological cannon beginning to glow with building energy. "Stand aside, or we will kill you where you stand." Marcus shifted his weight slightly, settling into a stance that Elena did not recognize from any martial art she had ever seen. "You can try," he said, and the hall held its breath, waiting to see what would happen when 12 elite warriors of an ancient empire tried to break through one human who refused to move. The first enforcer attacked without warning, lunging forward with a speed that seemed impossible for a creature so large, his clawed hand reaching out to grab Marcus and tear him apart. But Marcus was no longer standing where he had been a moment before. He moved like water flowing around a stone, sliding past the enforcer's reach while his own hand shot out in a strike that looked almost gentle. The sound it made when it connected was anything but gentle, a crack like thunder that echoed through the silent hall as the enforcer's armored chestplate shattered inward. The massive alien warrior collapsed to the ground, and he did not get back up for a heartbeat. Nobody in the assembly moved or breathed or spoke, because nobody could believe what they had just witnessed. A single human had just defeated a Dominion enforcer in less than 2 seconds. Then, the remaining 11 enforcers attacked all at once, abandoning any pretense of order as they rushed toward Marcus with killing intent. What happened next would be analyzed by military experts across the galaxy for generations to come, studied in war colleges and debated by scholars who could not explain how one human had done what should have been impossible. Marcus did not fight like any warrior the assembled delegates had ever seen. Before, he flowed through the attacks like a ghost, never where the enforcers expected him to be, always moving in ways that seemed to break the laws of physics themselves. His hands and feet struck with devastating precision, finding weak points in the enforcer's biological armor that the Volfri themselves had believed were hidden. One enforcer fired his plasma cannon at point-blank range, but Marcus had already twisted away, and the bolt passed through empty air to splash harmlessly against the far wall in the same motion. Marcus drove his elbow into the joint where the enforcer's weapon arm connected to his body, and the alien screamed as his arm went limp and useless. Another enforcer tried to grab Marcus from behind, but the protector dropped low and swept the alien's legs out from under him, then delivered a crushing blow to his throat that silenced him forever. The fight was chaos and beauty combined. A dance of violence so fast that most of the watching delegates could not even track what was happening. Elena watched with wide eyes, her heart pounding in her chest, as the man who had been her silent shadow revealed himself to be something far more than human. This was what the Protector program had created: warriors who had been enhanced through genetic modification and cybernetic implants, and years of training that would have killed anyone else. Their reflexes had been accelerated to operate 3 times faster than a normal human, and their bones had been reinforced with carbon nanotube lattice that made them nearly unbreakable. Their muscles had been augmented with synthetic fibers that gave them strength far beyond what their size would suggest, and their nervous systems had been wired with combat algorithms that allowed them to predict and counter enemy movements. Before they even began, Marcus Cole was not just a soldier, he was a weapon designed to protect humanity's most valuable people against any threat the galaxy could produce, and the Dominion enforcers were learning this lesson the hard way. The lead enforcer tried to coordinate his remaining soldiers, clicking orders in the Velthari combat language as they attempted to surround the human who was tearing them apart. But Marcus seemed to know what they were planning before they did it, slipping through their formation like smoke through fingers and striking from angles they could not defend. He broke arms and shattered legs and crushed weapons, moving with a brutal efficiency that left no room for mercy or hesitation. 9 seconds after the fight began, only one enforcer was still standing, and he was backing away from Marcus with something that looked very much like fear in his alien eyes. Marcus did not pursue him, and instead he simply stood in the center of the fallen warriors, his breathing calm and steady, as if he had done nothing more strenuous than a light jog. His gray armor was scratched in places where enforcer claws had come close but failed to connect, but he showed no signs of injury or exhaustion. 11 of the most elite soldiers in the galaxy lay broken on the floor around him, and he had not taken a single serious hit. The last enforcer looked at his fallen comrades, then at the human who had defeated them, and then he made a decision that no Dominion soldier had made in living memory. He ran. The assembly hall was dead silent as the enforcer fled through the entrance, his chittering footsteps echoing off the crystal walls as he escaped into the station beyond. Marcus watched him go, then turned his attention back to the podium where High Executor Krixveth stood frozen in shock and disbelief. "The ambassador stays with me," Marcus said, his voice carrying clearly through the stillness. "Those are not negotiable terms." Krixveth stared at the carnage on the floor below him, his mandibles working soundlessly as he struggled to process what had just happened in 10,000 years of Dominion history. No enemy had ever defeated their enforcers so completely and so effortlessly. Velthari had conquered hundreds of worlds and enslaved countless species, and they had done it because their military might was unmatched in the known galaxy, and now a single human had just shattered that illusion of invincibility in front of representatives from 300 civilizations. The whispers began almost immediately. Delegates leaned toward each other and speaking in hushed voices as they discussed the implications of what they had witnessed. Who were these humans? They wondered, who could produce warriors capable of such devastation? What other secrets were they hiding behind their polite smiles and diplomatic overtures? And most importantly, were they a species that could be pushed around, or were they something far more dangerous than anyone had realized? Elena watched the faces of the assembled delegates, and she saw something shifting in their expressions. A recalculation of assumptions that had seemed solid just minutes ago. Humanity had been seen as children among ancient powers, newcomers who pose no threat and deserve no respect. But children did not defeat Dominion enforcers with their bare hands, and children did not face down the most powerful military in the galaxy without flinching. Something had changed in the Grand Assembly Hall today. And everyone present knew that the galaxy would never see humanity the same way again. Marcus stepped back to Elena's side, resuming his position as her silent guardian, as if nothing unusual had occurred. "Are you injured, Ambassador?" he asked quietly. Elena shook her head, still trying to slow her racing heart. "No, I am fine," she managed to say. "Thanks to you." Marcus nodded once, his expression unchanged. "That is my job," he said simply, and somewhere in the observation galleries above, Elena saw communications officers from a dozen different delegations speaking urgently into their devices, reporting what they had seen to their home worlds. The message spreading across the galaxy was simple. Humanity had teeth, and they were not afraid to use them. The chaos that followed the battle was unlike anything the Galactic Concord had seen in centuries, with security forces from dozens of species flooding into the assembly hall while diplomats shouted accusations and demands at each other across the chamber. High Executor Cricksmith had recovered from his initial shock, and now his eyes burned with a rage that Elena could feel from across the room like heat from a furnace. "This is an act of war," he screamed, pointing one clawed finger at the human delegation. "Earth has attacked Dominion personnel on neutral ground, and we will respond with the full might of our fleets." The Valkyrie delegation was already moving toward the exits, their communications officers speaking rapidly into their devices as they prepared for what would surely come next. Elena felt her heart sink, because even though Marcus had saved her from immediate capture, his actions might have triggered something far worse. A war with the Dominion would mean the deaths of millions, and humanity did not have the ships or weapons to survive such a conflict. But before she could speak or act, the lights in the assembly hall flickered once, and then a new holographic display blazed to life above the central platform. It was a woman's face, stern and weathered by years of difficult decisions, and Elena recognized her immediately as Secretary General Chun Wei of the United Earth Government. "Delegates of the Galactic Concord," the Secretary General began, her voice carrying the authority of a leader who had guided humanity through its most difficult years. "I apologize for this interruption, but the circumstances required that Earth address these events directly." Cricksmith whirled to face the hologram, his mandibles clicking with fury. "You dare speak to us after your attack?" he demanded. "The Dominion will burn your worlds to ash for this insult." Secretary General Chun did not react to his threats, and her expression remained as calm and unreadable as stone. "High Executor, let us speak plainly," she said. "The evidence you presented against Ambassador Vasquez was fabricated using technology that our intelligence services identified and documented weeks ago." A second holographic display appeared beside the Secretary General, showing technical readouts and analysis reports that detailed exactly how the Valkyrie had created their false evidence. "We knew this trap was coming," Chun continued. "We knew you intended to humiliate humanity and demonstrate our weakness before the galaxy." She paused, and something cold and dangerous entered her eyes. "We chose to let you try." The whispers in the assembly hall grew louder as delegates tried to understand what they were hearing. "You see," Chun explained, "humanity learned long ago that the best way to deal with a bully is not to hide from them, but to show them that their threats have no power." The holographic display changed again, and this time it showed something that made even Cricksmith fall silent. Images of massive orbital defense platforms hidden in asteroid fields, their weapon systems powered down but ready to activate at a moment's notice. Fleets of warships concealed in the dark spaces between stars, their hulls painted black to absorb light, and their engines cold to avoid detection. Weapon systems that the Concord had never seen before. Technologies that humanity had developed in secret over 20 years of careful preparation. "Every human colony has defenses like these," Secretary General Chun said. Every diplomatic mission abroad is protected by warriors like the one you just witnessed. And every threat against our people has been anticipated and planned for. She leaned forward slightly, and her voice dropped to something that was almost a whisper. High Executor Krixveth. The Dominion has conquered many species over your long history, and you have done it because those species were weak and alone and afraid. Humanity is not weak, she continued. We have survived ice ages that lasted thousands of years and plagues that killed half our population and wars that nearly drove us to extinction. We are not alone, she added. Every human being in the galaxy is connected to every other through bonds of loyalty and shared identity that your species has never understood. And we are not afraid, she finished, because we know something that the Dominion has forgotten in your 10,000 years of easy victories. She paused, letting her words sink in. We know what it means to fight with our backs against the wall. And we know that there is nothing more dangerous than a species with nothing left to lose. The assembly hall was completely silent now, and Elena could see delegates staring at the holographic displays with expressions ranging from shock to fear to something that might have been hope. These were species that had lived under the shadow of the Dominion for millennia, accepting their place in a hierarchy that seemed as permanent as the stars themselves. And now they were seeing something new, a species that refused to accept that hierarchy, that stood up to the ancient powers and dared them to do their worst. Earth does not want war, Secretary General Chun said, her tone softening slightly. We came to this summit seeking peace and partnership, and we still believe that goal is possible. But we will not be bullied, she continued. We will not abandon our colonies or surrender our citizens to false justice. And we will not bow to threats from any power, no matter how old or how mighty. She turned her attention to the wider assembly, addressing all the watching delegations. Humanity offers friendship to any species that wants it, she said. We will trade with you and learn from you, and share our knowledge freely with anyone who treats us as equals. But to those who see us as prey, she paused, and her eyes seemed to find every hostile face in the chamber. We offer a warning. We bite back. The hologram flickered once, then stabilized. High Executor Krixveth, Chun said, turning back to the Velthari leader. You have a choice to make, and I suggest you make it carefully. Withdraw your false charges against Ambassador Vasquez and apologize for this attempted deception, and we can return to the business of peaceful negotiation, or continue down this path and learn firsthand what humanity does when we have no choice but to fight. She smiled, and there was no warmth in it at all. The Dominion has never lost a war because you have never fought anyone willing to pay the price of victory. We are. The hologram held for another moment, then faded away, leaving the assembly hall in stunned silence. Elena looked at Marcus, who stood beside her with his usual calm expression, and she understood now why Earth's government had insisted on sending a protector with her. This had been planned from the beginning. The confrontation, the battle, the revelation of Earth's hidden strength. Everything that had happened today was designed to send a message that would echo across the galaxy. Humanity was here, and they were not going anywhere. The silence in the Grand Assembly Hall stretched on for what felt like hours, though Elena knew it could only have been minutes, as every eye in the chamber watched High Executor Krixveth struggle with a decision that no Velthari leader had faced in 10,000 years. The Dominion had ruled through fear for so long that they had forgotten what it felt like to be afraid themselves. And now that fear was written plainly on Krixveth's alien features for everyone to see, his advisors clustered around him, clicking and buzzing in their native language too quickly for the translation systems to follow. And Elena could see the conflict playing out among them as they debated their options. Some wanted war immediately, demanding that the Dominion's honor be satisfied through the complete destruction of the upstart human species. Others urged caution, pointing out that Earth had revealed only a fraction of their capabilities and that attacking blindly could lead to consequences they could not predict. And a few, the oldest and wisest among them, simply stared at the human delegation with something like respect in their ancient eyes. These were beings who had watched countless species rise and fall over millennia, and they recognized what they were seeing now. They were seeing a species that reminded them of themselves when the Velthari were young, fierce, and proud, and unwilling to bow before. Enion turned slowly to face the human delegation, and Elena could see the calculations running behind his dark eyes as he weighed. Pride against pragmatism. The Dominion had built their empire on the principle that strength always prevailed. And by that same principle, challenging an enemy of unknown power was the height of foolishness. To attack humanity now would be to gamble everything on a conflict that could go either way. And the Velthari had not survived for 10,000 years by taking unnecessary risks. The High Executor's mandibles clicked together several times, a sound that the translation system rendered as a series of harsh clicks that conveyed frustration and anger. Finally, he spoke the Dominion. He paused, and the words seemed to cause him physical pain. Withdraws its accusations against the human ambassador. Wave of murmurs swept through the assembly as delegates processed what they were hearing. We acknowledge that there may have been irregularities in the evidence presented. Crixbeth continued, each word forced out like poison being drawn from a wound. And we are willing to discuss the status of the contested territories through proper diplomatic channels. It was not an apology, and everyone in the chamber knew it. But it was a retreat, the first retreat any species could remember. That Dominion-making in recorded history. Elena stepped forward from her position beside Marcus, smoothing her diplomatic uniform and composing her expression into one of calm professionalism. This was her moment. The reason she had trained for 15 years and traveled across the stars. And she would not waste it. The United Earth government accepts the Dominion's withdrawal of charges, she announced, her voice carrying clearly through the silent hall. And we look forward to resolving our territorial disputes through peaceful negotiation. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. Earth bears no ill will toward the Velthari Dominion or any other species in this chamber. She continued, we are a young civilization, new to the galactic community, and we know that we have much to learn from those who came before us. Her gaze swept across the assembled delegations, meeting eyes with representatives from 100 different worlds. But we also have much to offer, she said. Our scientists have made discoveries that could benefit every species here. And our artists have created works of beauty that deserve to be shared. We ask only for the chance to prove ourselves as partners and allies, to trade and cooperate and build a future together that is brighter than anything we can achieve alone. She turned back to face Crixveth directly. High Executor, the road to war is easy to walk but hard to return from, she said. Let us choose a different path instead, one that leads not to destruction, but to understanding. For a long moment, Crixveth said nothing, and Elena could feel the tension in the chamber like a physical weight pressing down on everyone present. Then the High Executor made a gesture that the translation systems could not interpret, a movement that seemed to convey acceptance and frustration in equal measure. The Dominion will consider your words. Ambassador Vasquez, he said stiffly, we will send representatives to discuss terms at a time and place of mutual convenience. Without another word, he turned and led his delegation out of the assembly hall. Under the assembly hall, their footsteps echoing off the crystal walls as they disappeared into the station. Beyond, Elena let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. And around her, the assembly hall slowly came back to life as delegates began talking and moving again. Ambassador Zoris was the first to approach her, His forearms spread wide in a gesture of amazement. Ambassador Vasquez. "That was extraordinary," he said. "I have attended Concord summits for 300 years, and I have never seen anything like what happened here today." Elena smiled, though she could feel exhaustion beginning to pull at her limbs now that the immediate crisis had passed. "I hope it was extraordinary." "In a good way," she said. Oris made a sound that might have been a laugh. "The Velthri have ruled through fear for so long that most species had forgotten there was any other way to exist," he said. "Today you reminded everyone that fear can be overcome." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You will have many visitors in the coming days. Ambassador representatives from species who have spent generations under the Dominion's shadow and are now wondering if perhaps things could be different." Elena nodded, understanding the weight of what Zoris was telling her. Earth had come to this summit hoping to gain a seat at the galactic table, and instead they had upended the table entirely in the weeks and months that followed. Delegations from across the galaxy would reach out to humanity, seeking trade agreements and cultural exchanges and mutual defense treaties. Some came because they saw opportunity in Earth's rise, and others came because they had suffered under Dominion oppression and saw humanity as a potential ally against their ancient enemies, and some came simply because they were curious about the strange species from the third planet of an unremarkable yellow star who had done what no one else had dared through it all. Elena remained Earth's voice among the stars, speaking with wisdom and compassion to anyone who would listen, and through it all, Marcus Cole stood at her side, the silent guardian who had changed the course of galactic history with 4 simple words. "That's close enough." On the day she finally returned to Earth, more than a year after the summit that had started everything, Elena stood on the observation deck of her shuttle and watched the blue marble of her home world grow larger in the viewport. Marcus stood beside her, as he had stood beside her through everything that had happened. And for once he spoke without being asked. "Ambassador, may I say something?" Elena smiled at the formality that he had never abandoned, despite everything they had been through together. "Of course." "Marcus." He was quiet for a moment, searching for words that did not come easily to him. "I was trained to protect your body," he said finally. "But you protected something far more important. You protected humanity's future." Elena felt tears prick at her eyes, and she did not bother to hide them. "We did it together," she said. "All of us. Everyone who believed that humanity could be more than just another victim of the galaxy's endless wars." She looked out at Earth, at the swirls of white clouds and blue oceans that had nurtured their species from the beginning. "We showed them what we really are," she said. "Not conquerors or victims, but survivors, a species that refuses to give up no matter how dark things get." Marcus nodded once, his expression unchanging, but his eyes warm with something that might have been pride. "That is why I became a protector," he said. "Because humanity is worth protecting," Elena smiled. And together they watched their home world grow closer, carrying with them the hope of billions who were counting on them to build a better future. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again.